early autumn, and these kind of grey, slightly miserable days are the perfect ones to start planning, buying, and most importantly, planting your outdoor spring bulbs for a great display next year. So today, that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be showing you a layered spring bulb planting in a container, also known as a spring bulb lasagna, so that you have a really long-lasting and most importantly, knockout display for next spring. Not only am I going to be showing you how to do it, but I'm going to be giving you my recommendations for some really good bulb combinations so that it's going to look really, really brilliant. Hey everyone, how's it going and welcome back. Autumn is the time to start buying and planting your outdoor spring bulbs for next year. And aside from the fact that it's just the time of year where you're meant to do it, for me, planting bulbs in autumn ticks another couple of boxes. For starters, it's just such a hopeful thing to be doing. There's something lovely about at this time of year when the garden is starting to slow down a little bit, to be able to dedicate a little bit of time to planting something up, safe in the knowledge that come the very late winter and into spring, you're going to get that lovely bright colour and lovely little show of flowers, particularly when the garden is still looking pretty flat and drab. Plus, if you're like me, and you don't massively enjoy doing heavy work out when the weather is either cold or wet or miserable, if you're planting in containers, it's a really nice constructive job that you can do inside, and you can tell yourself you're still doing important gardening without having to even put your coat on. So today, we're going to be doing just that. I'm going to be showing you how to plant a layered spring bulb container, also known as a bulb lasagna. Now, the concept behind it is super simple, but really, really strong. Rather than planting a container or a pot with just one type of flower that's only going to have quite a narrow period of flowering, instead what you do is you plant it with several different layers of different bulbs. Then what that does is it gives you the best of what each bulb has to give. And if you choose your bulbs carefully, you can get a really nice long ongoing display of several different types of spring flowering bulbs. It means you get way more value out of one pot without having to replant it. And it just looks really knockout. Now, I don't just love outdoor bulbs, I love indoor bulbs, and now is a great time to be planting your hyacinths and paper whites to force them to flower indoors around Christmas and New Year. I made a series of videos all about that last year, so I'll link them up above. Make sure to go and check them out. Buy yourself some indoor bulbs when you're buying your outdoor bulbs and have a go yourself. But let's get stuck into talking about exactly how to do your own bulb lasagna planting at home, because it is so easy and you are going to love it. So before we start planting, a couple of things that you need to think about. The first thing is the container that you're going to be planting your spring bulbs into. We are going to be cramming this full of bulbs, so you want to make sure that it's a decent size, but in particular you want to make sure that it's actually quite a tall pot. That's because we're going to have several layers of bulbs, finishing maybe about halfway or 2/3 of the way down the pot. And if you get a nice tall pot, that means there's going to be a nice layer of compost underneath that all of the bulbs can get their roots into, so that they're going to grow away really, really nicely. And then once you've sorted your pot, the next thing you need to think about are the bulbs themselves. The easiest combination to go for is to have tulips on the bottom, daffodils in the middle, and then something on the top that's going to grow very early and flower very early and is nice and small, something like crocuses or reticulata irises. Once you've got those picked out, then all you need to do is start putting it together, and it really couldn't be simpler. So the first thing we do is we're going to start putting some compost into the pot. Now, when it comes to planting bulbs, the general rule is you want to be planting them about 4 times as deep as the bulb themselves. It never does any harm for them to be a little bit deeper than that. So in this pot, I'm going to be filling it maybe about 1/3 with compost. The compost that I'm using, you'll see here, is just a multi-purpose peat-free compost, but what it has as well is a whole load of grit added to it. I've added this grit just to keep the drainage really sharp, because what you don't want are your bulbs sitting really soggy from now until spring, where they do have the potential that some of them could rot off. So I'm going to keep filling, and then we'll start planting up with the bulbs. Now the fun can really begin and we can start getting the bulbs in. Like I said, I filled this pot about 1/3 full of my compost and grit mixture, and we're going to put the first layer of bulbs in, which is going to be our tulips. Now, this pot, well, I think you could describe it as a riot of colour. I am going full on colour with this pot, and the tulips are really going to be the stars of the show. I'm going with 3 different colours. I'm going with, to start with, an old-fashioned, real standard of a tulip. This is Tulip Queen of Night. They have those really tall, about 50 or 60 centimetre high plants that have dark purple, almost black flowers. They're going to look really striking. And then in amongst those, I'm going to plant these. Now this is Tulip Triumph Negrita, which is a really beautiful but quite intense pink. So now you have an almost black purple with a pink, and then to really set it off and fire it up, I'm adding a few of these. Now this is called Amazing Parrot. How can you turn down a plant or a flower called Amazing Parrot? All 3 of these are going to be going into the same layer, and I've chosen these tulips specifically because, as well as having really nice bright complementary colours, they also flower at slightly different heights. So although they're going to be flowering at the same time, you're going to have a nice staggered display so that you can actually enjoy each of the flowers. The other thing that's worth noting is that when you would be planting bulbs outside, you'd really make sure that you space them quite far apart. We are not going to be doing that in this bulb jar. What we're going to be doing instead is packing them so close that they're about, well, really only their own width apart from each other. That means that we're going to be assured of a really good, strong display. So I'm going to get putting these in, get some more compost on top of those, and we can get going with the next layer. Hopefully by now you can see just how easy it is to make one of these up. We've got our layer of tulips in, we've got another layer of compost, and now it's time to get the next layer of bulbs in, and that is going to be miniature daffodils. And the ones that I've chosen to go with are called minnow. They only grow to about 20 centimetres high. They have little multi-headed flower heads that are lovely in white but also have a yellow centre. They are just going to look really nice, particularly with the shade of green that this pot is. So I'm going to start putting those in, and as with the tulips, we are not going to be planting them wide apart. We're going to be planting them nice and close. Now, at home you may be thinking, well, if we're putting all of these layers of bulbs in, how are they going to get to the top? Well, actually bulbs are really, really clever at doing whatever they need to do to push through to get to the light so that they can grow and flower. So what will happen is, as the tulips want to come up, they'll just weave their way through the bulbs. The daffodils will do the same, and then the layer on the top, well, they don't need to weave through anything, so it works surprisingly well. So I'm going to keep planting up with daffodils, and again, we put another layer of compost on, and then we can start planting our final layer of bulbs. Now we're really starting to get somewhere, and you can see we don't have that much room left in the pot, but we have room for one more layer of bulbs. We've got our tulips, we've got our daffodils, and the final thing we're going to be putting in are, well, what has to be one of my favourite spring bulbs, and it's Iris reticulata. What I'm going with though is a really bright purple one. You can get them in all sorts of shades, pale blues, bright blues, whites, but this, I just love the look of this colour. Now this one has a Dutch name, and I'm not very good with Dutch pronunciations. So if you're watching from the Netherlands, apologies for my horrific pronunciation if I get it wrong, but this Iris reticulata is called JS Diet, spelled D-I-J-T, and it's going to grow really nice and small, again, only about maybe 15 centimeters high, and it's going to be the first thing to flower way in the late winter around February time. So all I need to do then is start to get those bulbs in, and then we fill it with, yet again, another layer of compost. There we go, the very final bit of compost, and the pot is pretty much full. I need to be careful as I tip it down to show you because I don't want to tip everything out. You can see it's now pretty much full. We've got our 3 layers of bulbs, and then all we need to do now is finish it off. Now, what I think is really nice is to put just a nice thick layer of horticultural grit on the top. What that's going to do is it's going to make a nice clean surface when the bulbs come through. It helps to top it off just like any kind of mulch, and it really sets off the way the bulbs and, well, really the flowers look when they come through. And once you've got the pot made, it's really easy to look after until the spring. All you need to do now is give it a good water, put it somewhere outdoors where it's going to be maybe a little bit sheltered, do you know, like round the back of your garage or your potting shed, something like that. Keep an eye on it. Obviously don't let it dry out, but equally don't let it get super soggy. And another great thing to do is to put a slab on top of the pot or a bit of wire mesh just to stop little critters like mice digging through it or birds digging through it and trying to lift out the bulbs. And that's it. Give it time and it's going to start flowering in late winter. And I am certain that you're going to be delighted with it if you make one yourself. So the trick about the way these have been planted is the irises that are planted at the top, they are going to flower really around February time. Then the daffodils, as the reticulata irises are dying back, are going to come through, and they're going to be flowering more around mid-March and into early April. Then as they start to pass, the tulips are going to come through towards late April and into May, and you'll have that display. So you can see that really what you're looking at in this one, not particularly large pot, is a display that's going to continue for realistically a good 3 months. You are going to get serious bang for your buck. Now, I did promise at the start of the episode that I wouldn't just show you how to plant it, I would give you some of my recommendations for really good bulb combinations that you can put in. So, to summarise in this one, which is a really high impact, colourful one, I have Tulip Queen of Night, Tulip Triumph Negrita, and Tulip Amazing Parrot. I'm going to have to check if I've said the name wrong. I'll put it on the caption to make it correct. I think it's called Amazing Parrot. Then above that, we have Daffodil Minnow. And then on top, we have an iris, and that's Iris JS Deet. So that's going to give you an early purple colour, after that white and yellow, and then after that dark purple, pink and orange. But if you're not so much into bright colours, here's a really good suggestion for a nice muted palette that you can go with instead. So for the irises, this one is called Alida. It's a very pale, icy blue. I would choose this for the top layer. I think that's going to look lovely, you know, on those frosty mornings when everything outside looks quite cool and blue as well. So I would start with this. The layer below, for daffodils, I would go with Thalia. Now, Thalia is a really well-known one. It is not a miniature, so just be aware of that if you're planting it. It's going to grow to about 40 centimeters, but I think that could look really knockout. And what it has is these lovely pure white flowers that are really quite star-shaped. I love them. So I would be going with Thalia, or what you could do is you could also mix in some of the minnow as well, so that you get 2 different heights. And then for the base layer, we're going to be going with tulips again, but I'm going to go with 2 different types. The first one is called Purissima. These are really pale, but they're nice and tall. They're about 45 centimeters high, so they're going to make a really strong statement. And planted in amongst those, I found these. Now, I haven't grown these before, but they look beautiful in the picture. These are called White Valley. They just open up that little bit more. They have quite a lovely, almost like frilly edge, I think. and they're about 40 centimetres as well. So what you'll have is you'll have a lovely succession through the spring of a pale blue into white with a tiny tinge of yellow, and then for the tulips later in the spring, they're going to be lovely white as well. Hopefully those two plantings give you some really good ideas for the way that you can plant combinations in these pots to suit yourself. So I really hope this video has been useful. I hope it's really fired you out to get out and buy some bulbs, whether it's something you do every year already or whether it's something that you've never done before. It's so easy and it's so rewarding. I am pretty much willing to guarantee that if you try it, you're going to love it. Now, all I need to do now is take this, put it away somewhere and wait for spring for those lovely flowers. And also I need to do a bit of a tidy up because everything around me is now really messy. But as ever, let me know what you think about the video and what I'm planting, because I love hearing your comments, and it's really nice to be able to share comments amongst all of the Niall Gardens community. If you're not already a subscriber, make sure to hit the subscribe button, make sure to hit the bell icon. That way you'll be notified when I post my next video. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, do me a favour and hit the like button. And as ever, until next time, see you later.